I pulled into the driveway of the villa around 3 in the afternoon. The GPS had me going down this winding coastal road for the last 20 minutes, and I was starting to think I'd missed a turn somewhere. But then the trees cleared, and there it was, this massive white house, sitting right on the edge of the water. I just sat in the rental car for a minute, engine off, taking it in. The place was bigger than the pictures online made it look. 2 stories, lots of glass, with this curved driveway that looped around a little fountain. Way more house than I needed for just me, but after the year I'd had, I figured I deserved it. My phone buzzed with a text. "I see you've arrived. Be right out to meet you." That'd be Ella, the property manager I'd been emailing with. I grabbed my laptop bag from the passenger seat and stepped out into the heat. After months of fluorescent lighting and conference rooms, the sunshine felt good. I stretched, feeling all the knots in my back from the flight. A woman came through the front door and headed down the steps toward me. She looked to be in her early 40s, brown hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing a blue blouse and khakis. "Mr. Crane," she extended her hand. "I'm Ella McGuire. Welcome to Sea Breeze Villa." "Just Troy is fine," I said, shaking her hand. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course. How was your trip in?" "Long, but worth it." I glanced back at the house. "This place is something else." She smiled. "Wait until you see inside. Need help with your bags?" "I can manage." I popped the trunk and grabbed my suitcase. "Lead the way." The foyer opened into this huge living room with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the ocean. The furniture was all white and beige, minimal but expensive looking. Everything felt clean and staged, like nobody had ever actually sat on those couches. "So, the main living area is here," Ella said, gesturing around us. "Kitchen is through there, fully stocked as you requested. Dining room to the right. All the bedrooms are upstairs, though there's also a guest suite down that hallway if you prefer." I nodded, still taking it all in. "And the beach access?" "Right through those doors. The infinity pool is on the deck, and then it's about 20 steps down to the private beach." She led me to the back of the house and slid open a massive glass door. "This is most guests' favorite part." She wasn't wrong. The deck stretched the entire width of the house, with an infinity pool that seemed to drop right into the ocean. The view was unreal, blue water stretching out to the horizon, not another house in sight. "How many people usually stay here?" I asked. "It's designed for up to 8 guests, but we get a lot of couples or small families. Not many solo travelers like yourself." She gave me a curious look. "Big place for one person." I shrugged. I needed the space. Been working non-stop for months. "Well, you picked the right spot to decompress." Ella walked me back inside and handed me a set of keys. The house manual is on the kitchen counter. Wi-Fi password, TV instructions, all that stuff. My number's in there too if you need anything. "What about the owner? Nick, right? Does he ever stop by?" Ella shook her head. "Mr. Bradley lives abroad, Switzerland, I think, though he moves around. I've only met him twice in the 5 years I've managed this property." "So it's just me then?" "Just you," she confirmed. "Weekly cleaning service comes on Tuesdays, but I can cancel that if you prefer total privacy." "No, that's fine." "Great. Well, I'll let you get settled. There's a welcome basket in the kitchen with some local wine and snacks." She headed toward the door, then turned back. "Oh, and Troy? The sunsets here are spectacular. Don't miss them." After she left, I stood in the middle of that big living room for a minute, just listening to the quiet. No traffic, no phones ringing, no coworkers asking for just 5 minutes. Just the faint sound of waves and my own breathing. I dragged my suitcase upstairs and picked the master bedroom. King bed, another wall of windows facing the ocean, and a bathroom bigger than my entire apartment back home. I unpacked my clothes. Didn't take long since I'd only brought the basics. T-shirts, shorts, one nice outfit in case I felt like going somewhere fancy. Though honestly, I wasn't planning on leaving this place much. Back downstairs, I set up my laptop on the dining table. Force of habit. I wasn't planning to work. but I knew myself well enough to know I'd probably check emails at some point. Better to have it ready than to be searching through my bags at 2 a.m. when some work crisis hit. I checked out the kitchen next. Stainless steel everything, marble countertops. The fridge was stocked with basics: milk, eggs, butter, some fruit. The welcome basket Ella mentioned sat on the island. A bottle of red wine, some fancy cheese, crackers, and chocolate. I opened a drawer looking for a corkscrew and found one right away. Everything in this place was exactly where you'd expect it to be. I spent the rest of the afternoon exploring, found the thermostat and cranked the AC down a few degrees, tested out the sound system, walked down to the beach and stuck my feet in the water. By the time I made it back up to the house, the sun was starting to sink lower in the sky. My stomach reminded me I hadn't eaten since the airport that morning. I checked the freezer and found some fish fillets. Perfect. I'd noticed a grill on the deck earlier. I seasoned the fish with stuff I found in the spice cabinet and fired up the grill. While it heated, I poured myself a glass of that wine and leaned against the railing, watching the waves. For the first time in months, I didn't feel the urge to check my phone. The sunset was exactly as advertised, all orange and pink, reflecting off the water. I sat at the table on the deck, eating my grilled fish and drinking wine, watching the colors change. By the time I finished eating, it was dark, just the moon reflecting on the water. I was tired, but didn't want to go to bed yet. Something about being in a new place. I left my dirty dishes in the sink. I'd deal with them tomorrow, and took my wine glass out to one of the lounge chairs by the pool. The night was warm, and I could hear the waves crashing below. I must have nodded off out there because I woke up with a start, my empty wine glass tipping over onto the deck. A small red stain spread on the white concrete. I thought about cleaning it up, but was too tired to bother. I'd take care of it tomorrow. I dragged myself upstairs, barely managed to brush my teeth, and fell into that massive bed. The sound of the waves through the cracked window pulled me under almost immediately. The next morning, I woke up to sunlight streaming through the windows. For a second, I didn't remember where I was. Then it all came back. The villa, the ocean, my much-needed break from reality. I padded downstairs in search of coffee, still half asleep. When I walked into the kitchen, I stopped short. The dishes I'd left in the sink were gone. Not just rinsed and set aside. They were washed, dried, and put away. The counters were spotless. Even the grill, which I'd definitely left dirty, looked like it had been scrubbed clean. I frowned, trying to remember if I'd cleaned up after all. No way. I'd been too tired. I walked out to the deck, squinting in the morning sun. The wine stain I'd spilled was completely gone. Not even a trace of it remained on the white concrete. I checked my phone, thinking maybe Ella had sent a message about a cleaning service or something. Nothing. Just my usual work emails that I promptly ignored. Weird. But I figured this was probably just part of the premium rental package. Some kind of overnight cleaning service they hadn't mentioned. Or maybe Ella had stopped by. I made coffee, grabbed my sunglasses and a book, and headed down to the beach. The water looked perfect, and I had nowhere to be. Whatever mystery cleaning service had come through, I wasn't going to complain about it. Just one more perk of this fancy place, I guessed. I woke up feeling pretty good after a solid night's sleep. The sound of waves does something to your brain, I guess. I made some coffee and took it out to the deck, thinking this might be the most relaxed I'd felt in months. After breakfast, I decided to check out the beach. The sand was warm between my toes as I walked along the shoreline. I must have spent a couple hours just wandering, picking up shells and watching the waves roll in. It was exactly what I needed after the year I'd had. When I got back to the house, I didn't think twice about tracking sand across the tile floor in the entryway. I was hot and sweaty, so I just headed straight for the shower, dropping my wet, sandy towel on the bathroom floor. I stood under the cool water for a good 10 minutes, letting it wash away the salt and sand. When I stepped out of the bathroom 20 minutes later, I stopped, dead in my tracks. The floor in the hallway was completely clean. No sand, no footprints, nothing. I frowned and walked back to the bathroom. The towel I'd dropped was gone. I checked the linen closet and found it there, washed, dried, and folded perfectly. "What the hell?" I said out loud to the empty house. I checked my phone to see if Ella had texted about sending a cleaner, but there were no messages. I walked through the house, checking each room, but found no one. The doors were still locked from the inside. I tried to shake it off. Maybe I hadn't tracked in as much sand as I thought. Maybe I'd actually hung up the towel and forgotten. But I knew I hadn't. Over the next few days, I started paying closer attention. I deliberately left a coffee mug on the deck table while I went for a swim in the ocean. When I came back 30 minutes later, the mug was gone, washed, and put away in the cabinet. I tried again the next day. I scattered some papers on the dining table, then went out to get the mail at the end of the driveway. When I returned 10 minutes later, the papers were neatly stacked in the center of the table. This wasn't normal. I started experimenting more boldly. I dropped some crumbs on the kitchen floor, then walked out to the pool for exactly 15 minutes. When I returned, the floor was spotless. The weirdest test came when I deliberately spilled a bit of red pasta sauce on the white couch. I felt bad doing it, but I needed to know what was happening. I went upstairs to take a phone call and came back down 12 minutes later. The sauce was gone. Not a trace remained on the pristine white fabric. By the end of the week, I was thoroughly freaked out. This wasn't just good housekeeping. This was impossible. No cleaning service could come in and out without me noticing, especially not in the span of minutes. And why would they come multiple times a day? I finally called Ella. I tried to keep my voice casual when she answered. "Hey Ella, it's Troy from the villa." "Troy, how's everything going? Enjoying your stay?" Her voice was cheerful. "Yeah, it's great. I just had a quick question. I noticed the place keeps getting cleaned when I'm not looking. Is there a service that comes in?" There was a pause on the line. "Cleaned? What do you mean?" I explained about the dishes being done, the sand disappearing, and the towels being washed. "That's strange," she said, her tone shifting. "We don't have any cleaning crew scheduled during your stay. Mr. Bradley is very specific about guest privacy. The cleaning service only comes between guests, not during stays. So no one should be entering the house at all?" I asked. "Absolutely not. Would you like me to come check things out?" I considered it, but decided against it. "No, that's okay. Maybe I'm just being absent-minded. Long work year catching up with me, I guess." After we hung up, I sat on the couch staring at the walls. Either I was losing my mind or something very strange was happening in this house. I decided to gather some evidence. I deliberately made a mess in the kitchen, a few dirty dishes in the sink, some crumbs on the counter, a coffee spill I didn't wipe up. Then I set up my phone on a shelf where it had a good view of the kitchen and hit record. I walked out to the terrace and sat where I couldn't see into the kitchen, but could see the doors. No one came in or out. After 15 minutes, I went back inside. The kitchen was spotless. The dishes were clean and put away, the counters wiped down, the coffee spill gone. My heart pounding, I grabbed my phone and stopped the recording. I sat down at the dining table and played it back. The video showed the messy kitchen for several minutes. Then there was a slight jump, like a frame had been skipped, and suddenly the kitchen was clean. No one had entered. Nothing had moved except the mess, which was simply gone. I played it again, slowing it down at the point where the change happened. There was definitely a glitch in the video, just a fraction of a second, and then everything was clean. It was as if time had skipped forward, but I knew I'd only been gone 15 minutes. I set the phone down and looked around the empty house. The quiet suddenly felt different. Not peaceful, but watchful. My vacation was supposed to be relaxing, a chance to decompress after a stressful year. Instead, I found myself jumping at small noises and constantly looking over my shoulder. I couldn't explain what was happening here. All I knew was that something wasn't right about this place. The pristine villa that had seemed so perfect a week ago now felt increasingly eerie, as if the house itself was watching me. I got back from dinner around 8. The beachside restaurant was only a 10-minute walk from the villa, and I'd had a couple of beers with my fish tacos. Nothing crazy, just enough to feel relaxed. The sun was setting as I walked back along the beach, and I was thinking maybe I'd finally start that book I'd brought. I turned up the path that led from the beach to the villa and stopped dead. The front door was hanging off its hinges, not just unlocked or open, literally dangling sideways, attached by only one hinge. "What the hell?" I said out loud, suddenly very sober. I approached slowly, scanning the area around the house. No cars in the driveway besides mine. No people. Just the sound of waves behind me and the broken door in front of me. I stepped cautiously onto the porch and peered inside. My stomach dropped. The place was destroyed. The white couch was flipped over completely. Cushions had been slashed open, with stuffing scattered across the floor. The coffee table was broken in half. Books from the built-in shelves were torn apart, pages ripped out and thrown everywhere like confetti. The TV was face down on the floor, screen shattered. I stood in the doorway, not moving, trying to make sense of it. Had someone broken in? Was it a robbery? But why tear the place apart like this? I pulled my phone from my pocket to call the police. My hand was shaking as I tried to unlock the screen. That's when it happened. The broken door beside me suddenly swung upward. I jumped back, nearly falling off the porch. The door lifted itself back into position, and before my eyes, the broken hinge reconnected to the frame. The wood splintered in reverse, becoming whole again. "No," I whispered. "That's not possible." Inside, the chaos was undoing itself. The torn book pages flew through the air, not like they were being blown by wind, but with purpose. They reattached themselves to the bindings. Ripped covers mended before my eyes. Books floated back to their shelves, arranging themselves neatly. I backed away, still holding my phone, too stunned to even dial. The overturned couch righted itself with a heavy thud. The cushions plumped up, the slashes in the fabric sealing shut as the stuffing disappeared back inside. The broken coffee table pieces slid across the floor toward each other, joining seamlessly. The shattered TV screen pulled itself together like a jigsaw puzzle, each tiny glass fragment finding its exact place. The TV lifted itself, rotating in midair before settling gently on the entertainment center. Glass fragments from the broken windows rose from the floor and countertops. They floated upward, fitting perfectly back into the frames. Cracks disappeared as if they'd never been there. I stood frozen, watching as every bit of destruction reversed itself. Within minutes, the villa looked exactly as it had when I'd left for dinner. Immaculate, organized, perfect. The front door closed itself softly. I heard the lock click. My phone slipped from my hand and clattered on the porch. I bent to pick it up, my movements mechanical. I needed a drink. Several drinks. I tried the door. It opened normally. I stepped inside the pristine living room, looking around in disbelief. There wasn't a single sign of the destruction I'd just witnessed. Not a torn page, not a scuff on the furniture. Nothing. I went straight to the kitchen, found the whiskey in the cabinet, and poured myself a double. My hand was still shaking. I downed it in one go and poured another. I took the bottle and the glass and went out to the terrace. I couldn't be inside right now. The house felt wrong, like it was watching me. I sat in one of the lounge chairs, staring at the dark ocean. The sound of the waves should have been calming, but nothing could calm me now. I poured another drink and tried to make sense of what I'd seen. Houses don't heal themselves. Objects don't fly around and repair themselves. It wasn't possible, but I'd seen it happen. I must have sat there for hours drinking and thinking. Was I losing my mind? Was this some elaborate prank, a hallucination from exhaustion? Nothing made sense. By the time I finally went to bed, I'd convinced myself I needed to see it happen again. I needed to know I wasn't crazy. I woke up with a mild headache from the whiskey, but a clear plan in mind. I'd been passive long enough, watching things disappear and reappear, finding messes cleaned up. Now, I needed answers. I showered and dressed, moving around the kitchen, making breakfast like it was a normal day. I even whistled a little, in case the house was listening. I made a show of checking my watch, grabbing my wallet and keys, and heading for the front door. "Going to explore the town today," I said out loud to the empty house. "Probably be gone most of the day." I opened the front door, stepped outside, and closed it behind me. I walked down the driveway to where my rental car was parked. I opened the car door, then closed it without getting in. Instead, I circled around to the back of the house, moving quietly. There was a side entrance that led directly to the guest bedroom, the one room I never used. I slipped inside, careful not to make any noise, and gently closed the door behind me. The guest room was immaculate, like the rest of the house. King-sized bed with crisp white sheets, dresser, nightstand, and a walk-in closet with louvered doors. Perfect for what I needed. I crossed the room and slipped into the closet, leaving the door open just a crack so I could see out. The closet was empty except for a few spare hangers, giving me plenty of room to sit on the floor with my back against the wall. I pulled out my phone, put it on silent, and settled in to wait. 10 minutes passed. 20. 30. Nothing happened. The house was completely silent. I was starting to think I'd made a mistake when I heard it. A soft creaking sound from somewhere in the main part of the house. Then another creak, louder this time. Then a crack. I leaned forward, peering through the slats in the closet door. Through the bedroom doorway, I could see part of the hallway. A hairline fracture appeared in the wall, spreading like a spider web. The pristine white paint began to bubble and peel, curling away from the wall in strips. My heart hammered in my chest as I watched the destruction spread. The hallway light fixture swayed, then crashed to the floor. The glass shattered, but there was no sound of breaking glass, just a muted thud. I pushed the closet door open a bit more so I could see better. The guest room was starting to change too. A crack raced across the ceiling. Dust and small pieces of drywall rained down onto the bed. The mirror on the dresser clouded over, then fractured into a web of cracks. The bed itself seemed to age before my eyes. The crisp white sheets yellowed, then browned at the edges. The mattress sagged in the middle as if suddenly bearing an invisible weight. I felt a wave of dizziness. This wasn't a break-in being cleaned up. The house was destroying itself. I forced myself to stay hidden as I watched the furniture in the room deteriorate. The wooden dresser warped, its drawers sliding open as the tracks bent. The nightstand collapsed in on itself like it was being crushed by an invisible force. The destruction continued for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes. Then, just like the night before, everything stopped. For a moment, the house was frozen in its ruined state. Then it began to reverse. The crack in the ceiling sealed itself, the fallen drywall dust rising back up to fill the gaps. The mirror cleared, the fractures disappearing from the edges inward until it was perfect again. The bed regained its shape, the sheets brightening back to pristine white. In the hallway, the broken light fixture reassembled itself and floated back up to the ceiling. The peeling paint reattached to the wall, the cracks closing up like wounds healing at impossible speed. Within minutes, everything was perfect again. Brand new. Untouched. I sat in the closet, my back pressed against the wall, trying to control my breathing. What I just witnessed was impossible. Houses don't destroy themselves and then self-repair. It defied every law of physics I knew. But I'd seen it. Twice now. Whatever was happening in this villa, it wasn't normal. It wasn't sane. And I was trapped right in the middle of it. I bolted out of the closet, stumbling over my own feet. I crashed into the hallway wall, pushed off, and ran. Just ran. My brain wasn't processing anything except one thought. Get out. I burst through the front door and kept going, my feet pounding across the deck, down the steps, and onto the sand. I didn't stop until I hit the waterline, the cold ocean washing over my shoes. I turned around, breathing hard, and stared back at the villa. From here, it looked normal. Just a big white house on the edge of the water. Beautiful, even. The sun was hitting it perfectly, making it glow against the blue sky behind it. "What the hell?" I whispered, bending over with my hands on my knees. My heart was racing so hard I could feel it in my throat. I straightened up, still watching the house. Nothing moved. No walls cracking, no furniture flying around. It just sat there, looking like a perfect vacation rental that cost way too much money. A family walked by on the beach, a couple with 2 kids. The dad nodded at me. I nodded back, suddenly aware I was standing in wet shoes, staring at a house like a lunatic. I checked my phone. No service. Of course. For 20 minutes I just stood there on the beach. Part of me wanted to walk to town and never come back. Just leave everything. My laptop, my clothes, all of it. But the rational part of my brain kept saying there had to be an explanation. Maybe some kind of elaborate security system? Projections? I don't know. Something that made sense. Finally, I took a deep breath and headed back toward the house. Each step felt heavier than the last. When I reached the front steps, I paused, listening. Nothing. Just the sound of waves and distant seagulls. I pushed the door open slowly. Everything looked normal. The living room was spotless, just like before. The couch was perfectly arranged with its decorative pillows. The coffee table had magazines fanned out in an artful display. "Hello?" I called out. My voice sounded small and stupid. No one answered. I moved through the house cautiously, checking everything. I flipped light switches. They worked. I turned on the faucet in the kitchen. Water ran normally. I checked the doors. They opened and closed without any weird self-repair happening. In the guest room, there was no sign of what I'd seen. No cracks, no peeling paint. The bed was made with crisp, white sheets. The dresser stood solid and new. Back in the living room, I sat down on the couch and ran my hands through my hair. "I'm losing my mind," I said out loud. Maybe I was. Maybe the stress of the past year had finally caught up with me. Maybe I needed more than just a vacation. I needed actual help. But I knew what I saw. In that closet, I saw the house falling apart and putting itself back together. Twice now. That wasn't stress or exhaustion. That was something else. I spent the rest of the day in a daze, trying to act normal. I made lunch but couldn't eat it. I tried reading but couldn't focus on the words. I kept glancing around, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. When night fell, I didn't want to go to sleep. I made coffee and sat at the dining table with my laptop, pretending to check emails. Really, I was just waiting, listening. The house creaked occasionally, normal house noises, but each sound made me jump. Around midnight, I gave up and went to bed. I left the lights on in the hallway and bathroom. I felt like a kid afraid of the dark, but I didn't care. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Sleep wasn't coming. My mind kept replaying what I'd seen, the cracks spreading across walls, furniture aging and breaking, and then everything rewinding back to perfection. The digital clock on the nightstand showed 1:17 a.m., then 1:43, then 2:26. At 3:04 I heard it. A distinct crack from downstairs. Not just a house-settling kind of sound. This was louder, deliberate. I sat up in bed, my heart instantly hammering. There it was, again, and again. A series of cracks and groans like the house was straining against something. I slid out of bed and moved to the doorway. The sounds were getting louder. I took a deep breath and stepped into the hallway, moving slowly toward the stairs. At the top of the landing, I crouched down and peered through the railings. What I saw made my blood run cold. The living room below was caught in the same cycle I'd witnessed before, but this time it was happening faster, more violently. The couch split down the middle, stuffing bursting out. The coffee table legs snapped, sending it crashing to the floor. Cracks raced across the ceiling and down the walls like lightning. Then, everything stopped. For maybe 3 seconds, the house was frozen in destruction. And then it all reversed. The cracks sealed themselves up. The coffee table reassembled, the broken legs reconnecting. The couch pulled its stuffing back inside, and the tear closed up like it was being zipped shut. Within minutes, everything was perfect again, like nothing had happened. But then it started again. The same pattern of destruction, the same restoration, over and over. I watched, unable to move as the cycle repeated itself 4 times. It was like the house was caught in a loop, fighting against its own decay. That's when it hit me. The house wasn't haunted, it was trapped. Trapped in some kind of endless struggle against itself, forcing itself to maintain perfection no matter what. I backed away from the railing and returned to my room, closing the door quietly. I sat on the edge of the bed trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The cleaning, the repairs. It wasn't a service or a person. It was the house itself, constantly fixing everything, refusing to allow a single imperfection to exist. I didn't sleep at all. I sat there until I saw the first light of dawn filtering through the curtains. The sounds from downstairs had stopped about an hour earlier. As soon as it was light enough, I started packing. I wasn't staying another night in this place. No way. I threw my clothes into my suitcase without folding them. I grabbed my toiletries from the bathroom, not caring if the toothpaste was leaking. I unplugged my laptop and shoved it into its bag. I carried everything downstairs in one trip, my eyes darting around for any sign of whatever was happening. The house looked peaceful in the morning light. Perfect. Undisturbed. I loaded my car quickly, throwing everything into the back seat. When I was done, I stood in the kitchen for a moment, feeling like I should do something. Leave a note? For who? The house? I placed the keys on the kitchen counter and pulled out my phone. I typed a quick text to Ella. Something came up. Had to leave early. Thanks for everything. I sent it, knowing it sounded abrupt, but not caring. I just needed to go. I took one last look around the immaculate villa, then walked out, closing the door behind me. I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away without looking back. At the highway turnoff, about a mile from the villa, I pulled over. I don't know why. Some compulsion to see it one last time, maybe. From this distance, I could see the entire property. The white villa perched on the edge of the water, the infinity pool catching the morning sun. As I watched, something impossible happened. The entire structure seemed to shudder. Then, in a matter of seconds, it collapsed. Not like an explosion or an earthquake, more like the house simply gave up. The walls fell, the roof caved in, windows shattered. It crumbled like a sandcastle hit by a wave. I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white. But before I could even process what I was seeing, it began to reverse. The fallen walls lifted. The collapsed roof rebuilt itself. Broken glass flew back into window frames. Within a minute, Seabreeze Villa stood pristine and perfect once again, gleaming white in the morning sun. I put the car in drive and hit the gas. I didn't look back again. I've been home 3 days now. My apartment feels small after the villa, cramped and cluttered with the normal stuff of life. Dirty dishes in the sink, mail piled on the counter, laundry that needs doing, normal stuff, real stuff. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, scrolling through rental listings for Seabreeze Villa. 5 stars across the board. Every single review mentioned how clean it was. Immaculate property. Cleanest vacation rental we've ever stayed in. Everything was perfect, like no one had ever stayed there before. Yeah, no kidding. I clicked through photos of the pristine white couch, the gleaming kitchen counters, the spotless deck. The same spaces I'd watched tear themselves apart and put themselves back together. The images made my stomach twist. I typed Nick Bradley Villa owner into the search bar. Not much came up. A few business listings that might be him, might not. Nothing concrete tying him to the property. I tried Sea Breeze Villa history and got nothing useful. Just more rental listings and beach vacation guides. After an hour of searching, I slammed my laptop shut. What was I expecting to find? Local man owns self-healing house. Villa trapped in time loop, news at 11. I got up and paced around my apartment, suddenly feeling the walls closing in. It was getting dark outside, and the shadows in the corners seemed deeper than usual. I flipped on every light switch I passed. The radiator in the corner made a loud clank, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Just normal house noises, the kind real buildings make. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. My phone buzzed on the table. It was Mark, a friend from work. "Hey man, you back in town? Thought you were gone another week." I stared at the message. I hadn't told anyone I'd come back early. Hadn't really talked to anyone since I got back. I'd been too busy trying to convince myself I hadn't lost my mind. "Yeah, got back a few days ago," I texted back. 3 dots appeared immediately. Cool. Want to grab a beer? I'm at Murphy's with some people from the office." I hesitated. Being around normal people doing normal things might help. Or I might sit there the whole time thinking about a house that healed itself. "Sure," I replied. "Be there in 20. Murphy's was packed with the usual Friday night crowd. I spotted Mark at a table near the back with 2 other guys from our department. He waved me over. "Troy, there he is. Vacation man returns." Mark slid a beer across the table as I sat down. "How was the beach house? As amazing as the pictures?" I took a long pull from the beer. "Yeah, it was something else." "Dude, those infinity pool shots you sent were insane. Place looked like a freaking palace." I nodded, remembering how I'd texted him pictures that first day, before things got weird, before I watched the house destroy and rebuild itself. "So, why'd you cut it short? Weather bad?" asked Dave, one of the other guys. I opened my mouth, then closed it. Where would I even start? "Hey guys, funny story, but the villa I rented is trapped in some kind of supernatural cycle of destruction and restoration. Oh, and I watched it collapse and rebuild itself from the highway. They'd think I was crazy. Hell, I thought I was crazy." I took another drink. Something came up. Needed to get back. Mark raised an eyebrow. "Something with work? Because Thompson's been asking where those client reports are, but I covered for you." "No, not work. Just personal stuff." I cleared my throat. "Actually, the weirdest thing happened at the villa. The first night I was there." I stopped myself. Their faces were open, expectant, waiting for a funny vacation story, not whatever the hell I'd experienced. "What?" Mark prompted. I found out the place was owned by this reclusive millionaire. Nick Bradley supposedly lives abroad, never meets the guests." "Huh," Dave said, clearly disappointed by this non-revelation. "Probably some tax thing." "Yeah, probably," I agreed, relieved when the conversation shifted to office gossip. I nursed my beer and half-listened as they talked about deadlines and office politics. Normal stuff, safe stuff, nothing about houses that shouldn't exist. After an hour, I made an excuse about being tired from the trip and headed home. Back in my apartment, I kicked off my shoes and sat on the edge of my bed. The beer had taken the edge off, but my mind kept circling back to the villa. I picked up my phone and scrolled to Ella's number. My finger hovered over the call button. What would I even say? "Hey Ella, quick question. Does the villa regularly fall apart and put itself back together? Or was that just for me?" I tossed the phone aside and went to the bathroom to brush my teeth. The normalcy of the routine was comforting. Brush, rinse, spit. Simple human things in a simple human apartment. As I walked back to the bedroom, I glanced at the kitchen counter and froze. There was a small coffee stain near the edge, a dark brown circle about the size of a quarter. I hadn't made coffee today. I was sure of it. My heart started pounding as I approached the counter. The stain sat there, ordinary and menacing at the same time. I touched it with my finger. It was dry. With a shaking hand, I grabbed a sponge from the sink and wiped the counter. The stain came away easily. I rinsed the sponge and set it back down. Then I stood there, staring at the clean counter, waiting. Nothing happened. The stain didn't reappear. The counter stayed clean because I had cleaned it. Because that's how things work in the real world. Things don't clean themselves. Houses don't heal themselves. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding and turned off the kitchen light. In my bedroom, I crawled under the covers and listened to the normal sounds of my building. A neighbor's muffled television, someone walking in the apartment above, the hum of the refrigerator. For the first time in days, I felt myself relax. My eyelids grew heavy as exhaustion took over. I was home, in a normal apartment where stains stay wiped away because you wiped them, where things break and stay broken until you fix them, where perfection isn't maintained through an endless cycle of destruction and restoration. As I drifted off to sleep, I felt grateful for the imperfections around me, the dust under the bed, the dripping faucet I needed to fix, the crack in the ceiling paint, all the beautiful flaws of a place that existed in the real world.